again, as Wayne said, getting here on such short notice. This morning at 10 o'clock, Coach Hewitt and myself met and talked about the future of the Georgia Tech men's basketball program, and it was during that meeting that I had informed him that we would be moving in a new direction. He would not be retained as our head basketball coach. I need to say right here and now what a true professional Coach Hewitt is, and how much respect and admiration I have for him as an individual, as a coach, and as a representative of Georgia Tech. The 11 years that he and Donette and his family have given to Georgia Tech have provided some tremendous highs. The 2004 Final Four run will be something that no one ever forgets here at Georgia Tech. So we had that meeting. I had given him that information. Coach Hewitt then immediately, in the way that he is, asked about his assistants and his players, and we talked through that, and as Wayne said, how we were going to notify that constituency. It's been a very interesting and difficult month or so as the president and I, who have collaborated and concurred on this decision, reached it. But I think as we move forward and turn the page in Georgia Tech basketball, we have an awful lot of things going positively within our program, and we look forward to a very, very bright future. The opening of the McCamish Pavilion in about 18 months will certainly set a new base for basketball here at Georgia Tech, and one that we think will be very exciting for not only our student athletes, our students on campus, but our alums and fans as well. So with that, I would open it up for any questions. Doug?
How much of the decision was wins and losses, and how much of it was a seemingly fractured fan base?
Well, I think you look at all of those factors. I don't know that you put one over the other, but certainly it was not the type of year that we had expected or anticipated here. But I'm always hesitant to put numbers on wins that someone, whether it's whatever coach it might be, that they have to achieve, because there's a lot of factors outside that affect that. So I think when you put everything into a context, certainly the atmosphere around the arena, the lack of fan support was certainly something that played into the decision.
When did it come to your head that you have
The president and I met early, I guess this is Saturday, so it's earlier this week. We put a number of, as is my role in this, as the director of athletics, presenting the president with a number of options and then a recommendation, and as I said, he concurred with that recommendation.
How will the buyout be paid?
As stipulated in the current contract between Georgia Tech and Coach Hewitt, it will be paid as it is stipulated in the contract.
So the full sum, there was no negotiation for a lesser amount?
No.
Sorry. How will it be distributed over 5 years? Or?
It'll be distributed over 5 years on a monthly basis.
Moving forward with the coach search, will this be done internally, or will you hire somebody to do it for you?
We will have an internal department and internal campus group of individuals, a very small group, about 6 or 7 individuals. We will be utilizing the services of Eddie Fogler to assist us in looking at candidates and gauging interest. Eddie, as you know, is the former head coach at Wichita State, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina, and during my time in South Carolina, I got to know Coach Fogler very well and have stayed in contact with him over the last few years. Eddie has gotten into this type of business, and we look forward to utilizing his services as we move through this process.
What are you looking for? What characteristics are you?
I think that there are a number of characteristics, and I think first and foremost is we are looking for someone to help re-energize the fan base here at Georgia Tech. I mean, that's incredibly important, and to continue to recruit quality student athletes to come here and compete in the most prestigious basketball conference in the country, which is the ACC. I think that we have, as an institution, as a city, a great opportunity for someone to come in and be successful at Georgia Tech, and it's our charge over the next month to find the right person to come in and take over that job.
Is there a certain level of experience you're looking for with some power conferences, or must it be someone that has that on the resume, or can it be someone like a Paul Hewitt from
I think that it's very wide open right now. I mean, as you think about this, there are probably three buckets of individuals that would be there: current head coaches, current assistants, and people who are currently not in one of those other two buckets. So I think they're all open right now. We're looking for the best person to come in here and take over this job and lead our basketball program. So that we don't have a set level of criteria. That's what the search process is for.
When you talk about somebody to re-energize the fan base, do you think that needs to be someone with a name recognition, or is that an important part of the criteria?
Sometimes there are some people who are very dynamic and can energize and sell a product and sell not only student athletes to the institute, but people to come to games who may not be at a power conference or large school at this point in time. That's why you go through this search process, to make sure that you uncover or try to uncover the best person for the job, and that being one of the criteria that we would be looking for, someone with a lot of energy to be able to go out and do the things that are necessary to get people excited about Georgia Tech basketball and get our student athletes excited and about Georgia Tech basketball.
Do you think the Athletics Association did everything that it could this season to get people into the building in terms of marketing and advertising and promotion and stuff like that?
Doug, I don't know that you ever do enough. This is, Atlanta is an interesting town as it relates to that. We did some things, obviously there weren't a lot of people there, so maybe we didn't do enough. But it's, college basketball in general is a very, very difficult market because of all the games that are on television. And it's something that is that's why this is such a high criteria as we move through our search, to be able to have someone who can create and exude that type of energy.
Well, someone who has had previous involvement with the program as a player or an assistant coach, a plus?
I think it's always a plus when you look at those things. Is it the sole criteria? Certainly not.
Do you have a time frame in mind, or will you wait till after the NCAA when you can perhaps interview more people than possible now?
I think that our goal is to have, and again, I want to emphasize that this is a goal because we're dealing with a lot of variables as you go through this search process. But our goal as we sit here today is to have a head coach named prior to the Final Four.
Will having two former coaching salaries on the books limit you all financially in the type of candidate you can bring in?
Everybody in collegiate athletics deals with resource issues right now. The contract that Coach Hewitt is working has right now is an obligation to the Athletic Association and Georgia Tech, and we will, as I said earlier, honor that obligation as we move forward and look at a new candidate. If the person is the right fit, we'll make sure that we have the resources to take care of that as well.
So there's not a cap per se on what you're...
We're not going into this, Doug, with a cap per se. No.
Dan, I know you said it wasn't wins and losses, but was there a proverbial final straw, or was it just a cumulative effect?
There was no final straw. I have to be real honest with you. There was no final straw as you look at it. It was an accumulated effect.
Have you thought about anybody specific or which kind of bucket you want to choose from?
Well, as it relates to things as we move forward in the search, I'm not going to comment on those types of things and specifics as it relates to candidates and individuals. We'll reconvene just prior to the announcement of a new head coach, and at that time we could talk about the road that led us to that candidate.
How were the assistant coaches affected? Did they get, are their salaries extended, or are they done effectively?
Those coaches have contracts, I believe, don't quote me on this, that they're all through the end of June. They've signed a standard agreement that would take them through the end of June.
If Coach Hewitt were to have another job or at another school, how would that affect the buyout? Would it be a difference between his new salary and what he's?
The way the contract is written, that would have no effect.
Will you be talking to former players and maybe listening to what they think is the right way to go?
I think that we will reach out to some folks, absolutely, and talk to them, and I think Eddie will assist us in doing that.
I don't know if this was asked already, I kind of missed the question over there, but how much of a concern was the contract the coach would have, the amount that you guys were going to be paying over the next couple of years? Was that, obviously wasn't too much of a concern, but was it something you guys thought about?
Well, sure. As you go through the process of getting to this point, you have to put that into the mix. But at the end of the day, as we look at Georgia Tech basketball moving forward, it was the decision that regardless of the current contractual circumstance in place, that we needed to make a change. So it was a factor, Cole.
How much of a factor was, giving a new coach some time since you're moving into a new building to trying to have something built up for when you open that new building in 18 months?
Well, in making this decision now, that becomes a glass half full circumstance, that you would have, exactly as you described, a year where you're playing not on campus but in away from campus for those games. But we hope that the opportunity to play at Phillips Arena for a number of our games, certainly our ACC home games and a couple of others, will be a positive. I want to emphasize that we are not in any way, shape, or form discounting our opportunities for success in 2011-12. I mean, we're playing in a phenomenal arena, and we'll play a few games at Gwinnett Arena as well. So these are good venues for our student athletes to play in. So we're going to give everyone the opportunity to be successful from that standpoint while we're making this transition.
Do you feel like with a new practice facility, a new arena on the way, it's a real good time to go out and be able to acquire a top-notch coach, that you have a lot to offer right at this particular point in time?
I hope so. That's the circumstance we're in. So we're going to take all the positives that we have available to us, and certainly you've mentioned two very good ones, the new practice facility and the refurbished arena, to sell those. And remember, guys, when you go out in search of a coach, you are selling as much as they are selling to make sure that you find the right fit.
Are you worried at all about recruiting and recruits that have committed, or that Paul and his staff kind of set a good base with? Are you worried about that at all?
Well, you always worry about recruiting because that's the lifeblood of any program. But I hope that we're able to move forward with this swiftly enough that the new coaches who come in have an opportunity to create a relationship with the current players that we have signed to come to Georgia Tech, and make sure that they feel comfortable in our commitment to having a successful program here.
And Dan, on the same subject, will you reach out to these recruits that have signed prior to the new coach coming in?
That was done earlier today.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry if I missed on the timeline. You said you met with the school president earlier in the week.
Yes.
Can you give us a specific date?
Met with him, I believe it was Monday, or it may have been one day late last week and Thursday.
Okay, so it was before the start of the term.
Yes.
And at that point, did you reach resolution at that point, a final decision at that point before the ACC tournament?
We had come to a concurrence on that.
So regardless of what the team did in the ACC tournament?
Well, that's speculation, as
Well,
to what may have happened, in the tournament. Obviously, there was no finality to it until our 10 o'clock meeting today.
Was that meeting here in Atlanta, or was that in Greensboro?
It was, well, the president was traveling up there on Thursday, so we met in Greensboro.
The Final Four traditionally is a meeting place for coaches looking for jobs and that kind of thing. Why do you feel the urgency to have one name before that time?
we would like to make sure that that coach would have the ability to market himself to fill out the rest of his staff at that event, as opposed to having a head coaching position open at that gathering of coaches. And again, as I said earlier, this is our goal, and there's a lot of variables that go into that, but that's what we'd like to try to do.
Do you begin this search with a list, either written or just somewhere in the back of your brain, as to maybe some people that you would like to talk with?
Sure, absolutely. There are a few people who we think would be a good fit here at Georgia Tech. Now the challenge and question becomes: do they think that they're a good fit for Georgia Tech? So we'll begin there.
Can you talk about some of the previous hires you made? You hired some people who were assistants and some people who didn't have experience in BCS conferences for the various sports. Can you talk about some of the characteristics of those coaches that they had in common?
Well, I've hired a softball coach who was an assistant. I've hired a women's volleyball coach who was an assistant. I hired a football coach who was head coach.
Right.
So the two assistants that I hired to lead their programs, they were both incredibly knowledgeable about their sports, had good tenures at their previous institutions, successful tenures, and were incredibly full of energy and wanted to be a head coach and wanted to be at Georgia Tech. So those were all important factors. Certainly, as we went through the football search, we had an opportunity to sit and speak with Coach Johnson and his background and what he could bring to Georgia Tech. It became quite evident that would be a positive for us.
When you spoke with Eddie Fogler, either seriously or half seriously, did the conversation ever drift to his possible interest in this job?
No, it did not. It did not. Eddie's quite happy right now.
When did the payments, did the Hewitt payments start next month? It's just as if he's still here?
Yes.
I'm not sure if we discussed it, but is there a solid figure on how much Coach Hewitt is owed over the next 5 years?
Excuse me?
Is there a solid number on how much Coach Hewitt will be owed over the next 5 years?
Yes. Coach Hewitt will earn his base salary, his full compensation salary, which will end up after 5 years amounting to somewhere in the neighborhood of $7.2 million. I think it's been widely reported.
Then, as far as your meeting with Paul this morning, can you go into his reaction? Obviously, I would imagine it was one of disappointment, but just how did he take the news once you guys came to the decision?
Well, as I said at the outset, Paul is the consummate professional. He is someone I have a great deal of admiration and respect for. I think Paul is also, as I've gone through my 20 plus years in athletic administration, one of the most intelligent individuals that I've had the opportunity to be around. So the idea of meeting with me at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning, I don't think that was the outcome of the conversation was a shock to Paul. I think that we were able to get both sides of our thoughts out there, and then we moved on.
Was there any discussion about having him involved in some role in anything?
No. Not this time.
Based upon your knowledge of coaches' contracts and buyout clauses, and is it unusual for a buyout clause not to include it being altered if he is hired, after a termination?
I've read a lot of contracts. There's some that have it. There's some that don't. So I didn't put a whole lot of effort in. We are where we are. This is big boy basketball right now, and we are dealing with the contract that is in place. And as I said at the outset, we're going to honor that contract.
Will there be consideration toward the next coach's contract in terms of years, because there's not going to be a home court next year, like they get an extra year added because of that?
But we'll talk about that with the various candidates as we go through the search. But that certainly could be a possibility.
But no automatic rule.
Yes.
One or two more for Dan.
Dan, a name that's been thrown around a lot by the fan base, and I don't know whether it's just a dream on their part, is Mark Price. Is that someone that would be considered?
You know, I think that, you know, again, filling up one of those buckets, current head coach, assistant coach, or other, you know, I think Mark is in that other basket. And, you know, at the proper time, there could be some conversation to see what type of interest he might have. I know a lot of people are interested in Mark having this job. I guess the next question is whether Mark has an interest in it, and what skills, not skills, he has great skills and he was a great player, but what part of the package does he bring to what we're looking for?
Anybody else?
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dan.